A very good morning for those that were with us before Priscilla took us into a break. We are glad you're still with us here on Morning at NTV. The hashtag is Morning at NTV on Twitter. We are live, or rather streaming live on Facebook, as well as on YouTube. If you are just joining us, welcome on board. You are, of course, watching the country's premier morning show. We are not just a breakfast show, but your ultimate company. Now, the heat is unbearable. The haze merges the sky, lake and land. Kingfishers dive and rise as if playing with the wind coming off Lake Albert, near the vast oil reserves, which Uganda seeks to start exploiting. The section of the Rift Valley, a geological scar which runs through East Africa, is being transformed from a fledgling oil business. There are environmental concerns and questions over whether it's too late for the oil boom, but there are no disputing that change is coming to the wide valley. Below the steep escarpment, it is hoped that by 2025, the first of a potential 1.4 billion barrels of oil will be pumped from the ground and other wells across the region. This is a worthy investment for Uganda, despite pressures to go green. This morning, we have Yusuf Serunkuma, an analyst, to help us navigate what is no doubt increasingly becoming a very contentious issue. Should we go for growth and development at the cost of the environment, or the experts know exactly how to play the two? A very warm welcome to the program, Yusuf Serunkuma. How are we doing?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm good. Thank you.
They're pretty good. The other week, the president launched or presided over the launch of the spudding process. That is the very first act when it comes to the siphoning of oil out of the ground, and then the process of refining it to be what we want it to be, and ultimately to make us some money gets underway. I was excited. Some Ugandans are not excited, as some are. I don't know whether you fall on both or you are looking at this picture from outside the frame.
There's a bit of indifference, which is understandable on the part of so many Ugandans.
That's right.
It's understandable to be indifferent for different reasons. One is that we don't have enough information about what is happening. Right? There's a dearth of information.
Just a moment before you continue with that, allow me just be able to take on what is no doubt a very critical update on this particular conversation. We shall, of course, also be joined by Mr. Collins Tugumisiriza. He's an economist and one of the leading minds when it comes to some of these issues. A very warm welcome, Mr. Collins Tugumisiriza. I would allow Mr. Yusuf Serunkuma to go ahead with that preamble as we come to you.
I was saying that we do not have enough information to work with. You know, I think that's the first problem. As analysts, as Ugandans who are anticipating, who should be anticipating proceeds from oil. So there's a gap in what we know and what we don't know. Okay. Right? You did a story here which showed us that, you know, the deal we negotiated has 15% coming to Ugandans.
That's right.
Well, 15% of big money is coming from oil is big money, but we don't know if that was the best deal we could get, right? Oh. So I appreciate the indifference from so many Ugandans, being unsure which side to take. Should they be like overly optimistic, or are they okay? Because, you know, also the African continent, we have so many rich countries that are oil rich. And many of them on the continent have remained poor despite having this resource with them. Okay, fairly, you know, not really different from the other countries which haven't started exploring their resources. So that's the indifference, and I think it comes from a very strong place. You know, the dearth of information that we have as analysts and as Ugandans, and also the fact that. And this is very serious, by the way. The idea that we don't have enough information as analysts and as Ugandans is very serious, because, you know, the anxiety that it creates in the minds of many Ugandans is really huge, right? And my expertise to talk about comes from the book we did before the first drop, book that we did when we did field work in 2017 in Western Uganda. we realized even then there's still a dearth of information, right? When we went there and spoke to the people on the ground, the people of southwestern Uganda, of western Uganda, western Uganda, who you would think are the closest to the resource, and perhaps because they suffered the dislocation,
right.
in so many ways, you would think their anxiety, rather their anticipation of benefit from the presence is high. But as we spoke to many of them, and as we show in our book, not much. There were tears and
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah. There is what is no doubt sounds like an indictment of a country's prospects when it comes to oil. I would love to ask you, Mr. Collins Tugumisiriza, are you grappling with a lack of information on this too, or you're sufficiently furnished with everything that we need to know? And if you do, please take us through what you know when it comes to what is in it for us and what prospects we can actually look at in tangible terms.
Sources of information are available, and actually if you dig you can find right from the time of exploration, so
That's
you
right.
can actually find it. Perhaps it's not easily it's not being communicated effectively to the public and in the digestible terms. When something is new, you don't fully understand it, we don't have a lot of experts in it, so it's
That's
not
right.
our traditional cash or not cash source. So, however, when you're making such a decision as to whether we are going to benefit or not, there's first of all other case studies around the world.
Yeah.
So indeed, there are countries that have benefited richly and have distributed it well to the rest of the country, and there are those that have not. So case studies are there. It's not like it's something that has never been done in the world. So it's easy as well to know whether we'll benefit or not. Secondly, there are also other places, sources of information, like when you're making, you consult your priest, you consult your prophet. Now in 2017, when we had that issue when fuel prices were dropping, there was a Ugandan prophet, Prophet Mbonye, who said Uganda should go forward with oil and ignore environmentalists. So now when you have data from around the world, scientific, then you also have spiritual information data, now you have what? A clear chance to make a decision.
Are you suggesting we should?
So it was a good decision that the president took that move, and the decision that when you talk about the oil sharing, whether we'll benefit, I think we will benefit. How may still be vague, but it's clear how. For instance, if the 15% of the share is written, there is more that can be benefited by government through taxation, through other ways. And then secondly, the factor of local content was put very strongly in those agreements. So when when you go down there to Kabale, to Hoima, you see they're saying that if your company has foreigners but locally registered, then you are disadvantaged. But if you have locals as shareholders in that company, then they give you jobs to supply.
That's interesting.
So already there is potential, there is I think being optimistic and seeing how to harness it. The locals probably have not been adequately prepared, and this is not an area they don't know how to get in. They also don't have the financing. For instance, if they ask you to supply every week tons of something, that would be another issue. So they need finance support and NGOs, charities to lift them up, to train them, to change their mindset. So and from the leadership point, the top, I think there's also a need for them to give more assurances that of how the revenue will be distributed.
Of course, you wouldn't discount those who are skeptical about whether we can actually be able to make the best of this oil investment. They come from a point of knowledge about the practices of government and how it handles money. And that has been something that is very critical. People are saying, yes, we know the potential in oil. However, we also know our people and we know our government. And there are no safeguards enough to reassure the population that actually that can be achieved. What can be done for the country or the population to get that trust? Because it is important.
You're right, you're right. I think what can be done is civic education. on these case studies of how countries have maximized their petroleum and those that have not. Because for as long as the public is ignorant of the technicalities that are involved, for instance, when I see the agreement, like Angola's agreement, is online, and who published it is the US SEC, Securities Exchange Commission. So you can tell that in that contract they're saying that revenue will increase annually. 15, 30, 20, I mean at 50, things like that, up to about 70%.
Yeah.
Now, ours is probably not, and French maybe has not published it as well in their cap. But civic education makes a huge difference. And for instance, Norway's story can be an example. And what can be done, because the amounts are huge, what can be done, is to look for the entry points that make a huge difference for locals and then for government. If a lot of money comes, also Libya's story while Gaddafi was still president, there are things he did. So there can be commitments, even perhaps in the law, that money that comes from oil is not subject to debate, is not subject to anything else. It goes straight to, for instance, infrastructure, UNRWA. Now, if it is in the law, then you know the distribution of the money starts from UNRWA,
That's right.
utilizing it. Or you say money goes straight to Farmers Association or Commodities Exchange. Then you know it goes to, this percentage goes to wages, this percentage goes to something like that. So once it is fixed where the money will go. But now when it remains that we'll get 15%, then we shall discuss
At that point.
what to do. That's now where the trap is.
Very interesting there. Yusuf Serunkuma, you edited the book before the first drop. Oil capitalists and the wretches of Western Uganda. It will be a bit foolhardy, I must say, on my part, to seek for the optimism from you when what you have here, as in terms of what you edited, the anecdotes are looking at the negatives. Are there other positives you can look at in this book?
You know, the book is a collection of chapters by different scholars at Macquarie University.
Okay.
So we have 60 scholars, most of them, all of them actually PhD,
Yeah, sure.
who came together and did field work in different aspects. So there's a land question, there's a gender question, there's a children question, there's a governance question. There is a movement from from homesteads to houses, the resettlement plans. And it's, when you were in Western Uganda doing fieldwork with us, you were struck by the enormity of regrets. You were struck by the pain, because you know the intensity of land grabs after the oil was discovered. You know, Hoima sugar, moving entire villages with bullets and security forces. The compensation plan, which was a nice compensation plan, but which was banded by giving money to people in these huge amounts, and in the process they wrecked their lives. You know, you need to understand the compensation could be a form of violence itself. So it was compensation by the
giving you a lot of money.
I mean,
when you have it handled, a lot of money,
these were peasants
is detrimental.
Living peasant lifestyles, and all of a sudden they had all this money thrown at them. And I think from that, you can think about this entire country, right? Because, you know, this is the intensity now. I mean, we've had 100 years of expectations.
Yeah.
But the intensity that we have now started in 2005. If you think 2005 to today, you're still talking about civic education, for example. You need to do civic education. This is 2005 to today. It doesn't look like our oil. You know, Mr. Museveni told us it's his oil. You know, if today, and you look at people like myself and Collins here, that we're still struggling to understand what is really happening, you know, and you'd think because some of our privilege being scholars and living in the city would have access to information. If it's painfully unavailable, right? So you need to think about what would happen in that moment when all of a sudden there's money everywhere, right? I'm just thinking there is. I don't think there's going to be. What will happen to this country if there is money everywhere? You know, among the things that have happened to this country is that we've securitized oil.
Securitized.
Right? Securitized. It's become a security issue, right? So this is, I think, why deliberately there's not much information to work with, because, you know, it's a security issue, right? So the securitization of oil has good and bad things about it, because as you know, they moved the oil pipeline from Kenya to Tanzania because of security issues.
That's right.
There's good and bad in it, because, you know, if you think it's a security issue and then you hide information from the public, but the public is meant to benefit, you know what I mean? There's danger there. So from the chapter on, say, on people who are compensated in Western Uganda after they were being moved from their pieces of land, and in the process actually wrecked their lives, that is something to think about, right? But the other point I wanted to make is this: there's something bizarre about African oil, right? As compared, say, to the Middle East and Southeast Asia, there's something bizarre. You know, and you mentioned Libya. Libya is an interesting case, because Libya, it was Libya oil, it was government oil, right? There were no private foreign players harvesting Libyan oil. Qatar, which has made so much money from oil, is government oil. Russia, which has made so much money from gas, is Russian gas, Gazprom. Iran, which has made so much money from exporting oil, it is Iranian oil.
Are you suggesting oil projects here should entirely be under government that lacks the capacity to even set up a refinery on its own?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. There's something bizarre about African oil, right? That I don't know, because, you know, when you mention the other examples, Angola, Niger, Nigeria, all these countries are rich, South Sudan, Sudan, you're always asking the question, how have they been able to transform themselves?
Have they been able to transform
that's the question you're always asking. And I think for me, is that we are in an area where the free open markets, which allow foreign oil companies to come into these small economies, and they control the process, the ones drilling, and they take care of the books, and the contracts are hidden. You know, they make most proceeds than the locals, right? So this is something bizarre about, and I'm really thinking about it, and as a Pan-Africanist, as a scholar who thinks more than what we have in this country, it really bothers me. There's something interesting about African oil. You see all the other countries, you see Qatar is a very small country. They've made so much money from their oil. Right, so there's something bizarre about ours and theirs.
Interesting.
When you have open, when the space is open for foreign players to come and play in this space, because, you know, we have the National Oil Company, right? We do. It's regulatory. It's not. It doesn't. It regulates. Yeah. Right. When we talk about national, it doesn't own. When you talk about local content, you know, we don't. What does it mean? It has remained abstract.
We have an economist on set. Help us understand. When you look at the ownership mechanisms of oil, when you look at countries like Norway, Russia for gas, and Nigeria, I wouldn't love to put Nigeria in a position where it's a success story for us to look to or benchmark, but when you look at the various models of oil governance and management, is there anything that we can benchmark and either carry and simply use here, or we have the capacity, or hopefully, to kind of construct our own mechanism around which we can govern this oil better than, say, Angola, Equatorial Guinea? Because I would love to look at countries where we're in the same, you know, bracket. I wouldn't love to compare ourselves to Norway or any other like Qatar.
I think what distinguishes us from, say, Norway or Qatar or so, is not because they are better than us, but if you look at their agreements or contracts, they are very good. So, so it's copy-paste is possible. Copy-paste is possible. However, the will of our leadership or people to make such commitments to its public and the like, because somehow in between the vagueness or hiddenness of any aspect is also a benefit to some individuals.
That's right.
Examples are there. As I said, we could lock up the distribution of that money to specific areas from where, if it is released, what does it go to? And if it happens like that, then accountability of the money, of the proceeds, comes from did this happen? What did UNRWA do with the money? What did, say, if it went to workers' benefits, if it went to health sector? Now you're asking if we have a health authority, like we have a roads authority, and the health authorities now to implement either health services. Now you're saying, so is there a new one? So it is easy, because of the sophistication and the amounts of money being big, it is easy to trace this money and say, this goes to this, this goes to this, this goes to this. And even today, to commit it to contractors that should be waiting for it. You see what I mean? You don't have to first wait for the money, because this is heavy investment. Everything is highly precision. They would say by this date, the first drop will come, the first payment will be on this date, things like that. So you can also now tell what you will do on this date or that date and commit it somehow to an outcome that you want to see. And when you do it like that, and even say lock it up in Parliament with the law, then you avoid, what do you call it, have ad hoc discussions that let's now redo this. Now we have another crisis, we need to divert it to security. Now we need to divert the money to another emergency. You avoid that. So other areas begin to look for sources of money elsewhere.
All right, we shall go for a break, but when we return, Yusuf Serunkuma will take us a little bit deeper into the findings in the book that is Before the First Drop: Oil, Capitalists and the Wretches of Western Uganda. We need to find out a little bit more, including what the environmentalists are up to, especially in light of what appears to be a hiccup on their part. The European Union resolutions seem to have been overcome, and at the end of the day we shall be looking to see what is the next step in as far as environmental activism around oil is concerned. Do stay with us, we'll be right back.
You're watching Morning at NTV.
Are you hit by January brokenness? Daily Monitor e-paper got you sorted at just half the price. Stay informed even at your lowest with your daily dose of news, jobs, tenders, weekly commentaries, entertainment, and so much more, all at half the price just for you. Simply browse to epaper.nation.africa/UG. Select login and enter your email address and password. Select your most preferred subscription plan and enter the promo code MORE FOR LESS for the discounted offers. Select your payment mode, then select your convenient payment method and follow prompts to read. For more information, contact us on 0312 301100 or WhatsApp 0782 819017. Daily Monitor. Truth every day.
Every Monday at 10 p.m.
I'm the champ. You want to come get it.
Watch the latest on local and international sports news and analysis. We never stop giving you more. Every Monday, 10 p.m. on NTV Spotlights.
Oh, nice pass, Kaluma. De Fruto has settled for the bronze.
Only gets better. Every Monday at 10 p.m. on NTV Spotlights.
Why should the Ugandan pay high taxes for textile and garments? The fact is that our local production cannot meet our demand or the market demand. When you go downtown, Nabugabo, a shirt which you could access even at 20,000, now it's 40. Because the taxes, the values are high.
You're watching Morning at NTV.
Welcome back. Now, the interesting thing about talk shows is that the conversations on air many times get a little bit heated behind the scenes, and we wish we could share just about everything that goes on behind the scenes. You want us to?
Let's debate it, yes.
Debating it.
Yes.
Earlier in this conversation, and I'm sure some of you would love to hear it, Collins Tugumisirize suggested that the sentiments of individuals, including what he describes as spiritualists, is very critical when it comes to the decision-making processes of some of our leaders. I would like to not give explicit time to this,
Yes.
but what is the role of spirituality, not spiritualism? I must be very critical about that before I'm misunderstood, in our leaders' decision making. Because you suggest, and I'll be very unequivocal, that most of our leaders, including on the global scene, depend on spiritualists' views in order to make decisions. If you can, don't take us into a study of spirituality. 1 minute. What do you mean by that?
You see, all leaders, especially when you cross a line, you're running for politics or you're dealing billions of dollars, they have spiritualists they consult. Prime ministers, heads of state around the world, they have spiritualists they who are advisors. And this spiritualist opinion matters matters more than a professor, because many of these billionaires, like you saw for, what's his called, Facebook's guy, Zuckerberg.
What did he do?
When he went to open up India offices, he talks about Nim, Guru Nim, who has guided him. If it wasn't for Nim, he would not have succeeded with Facebook. Now, this is an engineer, a brilliant man, a what, but you know, for professors, what you do, after you've made up your decision, you now come and pay them, and then you say, do for me a report or something.
Yusuf Serunkuma is taken aback more than I am.
I don't want to contribute to that.
And besides,
that's not my
I just wanted that. It was interesting.
No, that's not my type of.
But at the end of the day, like you said, let's not go into that. Yeah. But I needed something to come out there that, please, when you see some of these politicians grappling with decision making, they either can't do this or the other. Perhaps the spiritualist has told us. This is Morning at NTV. It was on a lighter note. Yusuf Serunkuma, before the first drop, oil capitalists and the wretches of Western Uganda, there is a lot that needs to be understood when it comes to Uganda's latest path of economic transformation. But environmentalists are concerned that this is not going as it ought to. Yeah. What is the next step now that they appear to have registered a setback to a process they had wanted to come to a halt?
No, I mean, I should start by giving you a history of this environmental discourse. You know, when the EU Parliament passed a resolution to say we should be slower in developing the pipeline, I met it with conflicted sentiments, because for me, on either side of this conversation, you're still speaking the language of the colonizer. For example, the idea of preserving the environment. White people constructed Africa as a space where humans don't exist with nature, as a heavenly bliss of only fauna and flora, of animals. That's how they think about. That's how they think about Africa. So Africa, humans are not there. In fact, in Africa, animals could be more important than humans.
To the powers
to the
environmentalists.
This is why you see in Tanzania, in Ethiopia, in Kenya, they are kicking people from their habitats. People have been coexisting with nature out of these places in the claim that they're dangerous to the environment. They're not. In this climate conversation, Africa is not a contributor. Right? I should give you a statistic.
Yeah, of course.
Look,
in
Africa, the average meat consumption is 17 kilograms. An average person eats 17 kgs of meat a year.
17 only.
17, well, maybe you eat much more. But the average is 17 kgs a year. You know how much Europe and North America consumes?
Oh, my God.
The average meat consumption in Europe and North America is 127 kgs.
127.
Those are like 3 pigs, right? So you think about, so when you say we're contributing, you know, consider the other example is, you know, people, for example, in the Masai Mara, the Maasais, they eat very little meat. They don't have vehicles. They don't have phones.
Yep.
Right? They walk on foot. They don't have laptops.
And they have many cows.
And then you're kicking them from their nature, that living with the animals, they're contributing to environmental degradation. Right? How?
In other words, you are suggesting this whole campaign that is undertaken by environmentalists is
Anti-human.
something that is already rigged against us.
It's very anti-African in the sense that they don't consider Africa as Africa exploitable by the people who live in this continent for their benefit. And that's the danger. And that has been well documented. When you look at organizations like UNICEF, WWF, all these started like organizations protecting the welfare for the empire. They started in the 1800s to preserve the welfare of the empire. So they start as colonial constructions. Now they've become so good that they're concerned about the environment. No, they're not. They are perpetrating the idea that Africa is not a space where humans interact with the environment. That the Africans can exploit nature for their benefit. So that's one part of the conversation. The other part is that even if when you insist that we should go ahead and exploit, right? Even if you insist we go ahead and exploit, irrespective of the environmental conversation, it's them who are going to benefit more. It's Total, which is mining. It used to be Talon, Senap now. The other ones are going to benefit more. Right? And what they were saying, and this is why I don't talk about European hypocrisy and pandering to the public, to the media. It's their companies which are here. You look at South Sudan, the Glencore executives were going to South Sudan, putting themselves in state contracts so that they can exploit
the resources
oil resources in South Sudan. They're here. And then all of a sudden, because they want to look good, they turn around and start preaching to us about the environment. Right, so it bothers me that the idea that you see Africa as a place where humans don't exploit their environment for their benefit, that you have to stop them, right? But that notwithstanding, in the chapter on human rights, I think the chapter on the environment, there's a guy Robert Mugaga writes about in there. We have a governance question in this country. We have a problem with governance, right? That all these good things that are written in the agreements, we have over 10 laws which were passed in the last, I think, 20 years.
20 years to help us streamline everything.
All these beautiful laws which are in place. It's very clear that we have a governance problem in this country, that you're not sure where they're going to be implemented. I can tell you, when you look at the section on children, they were demolishing schools before they built new ones in Western Uganda. So you go to a village, they demolish one school, so it's not operational anymore, but they haven't built another school for kids. So kids who are studying in this place have to move,
wait for the
to the next nearby school, which is 17 kilometers away.
Okay.
And technically, all of those kids were kicked out of school, right? So with all those in mind, when you go to Ramtonga and people are being kicked out from their places where they've lived for years, they were being shot and their crops banned and their animals banned. You say, well, we have the good laws on how we're going to implement environmental protection measures. But what we have seen so far is that you have abused everything in the book. If you take lessons from our book, if you take lessons from what we found out, it is that the governance question will still remain real, even when we support initiatives to move ahead.
All right. What I do gather as an innocent Ugandan who is watching from the side is that we love the developments that are being undertaken, but we know the government, we know our people, and we do not trust that a good job can be done. Well, some will say, give the government the benefit of the doubt. Some will say, at the end of the day, what is the opportunity cost? Well, let me see what my man, Stephen Mbide, has on the ground. Perhaps there is a little bit silver lining on the clouds out there.
Chris, good morning to you. The merrymaking, the festivities are now out of the way for the students, and for some private schools, some of them have already resumed school, while the government schools will be officially resuming on Monday, that coming Monday, that is February 6th. And here in downtown Kampala, what's happening here is that the parents, the students, the sellers, or the business community here is now trying to do some business, of course, with back to school shopping getting down here in Kikubo and the rest of the areas around downtown Kampala. You can see books, sets, geometry sets, pens, scholastic materials. Mama, what's it? Oze kugula kati?
Kubitabo by'abaana.
By'abaana. Basomera wa?
Baba asomera Kapeka Standard School.
bakugambye ebbeeyi etyayo ogisobodde
ngisobola buli kyoba sayizi oyagala buli sayizi ya kitabo balina ebbeeyi yaayo.
Kati abaana bali mbadde bali mu luwummula baako obugambo bw'obawa nga beeteekerateekera okudda ku ssomero.
Abaana mwenna abali eyo nga beeteekerateekera okudda ku ssomero babe beegendereza mu bye bagula, ate abazadde bafubanga bwe basobola okulaba nti babibagulira babikozese bulungi n'okukekkereza bisobole okulaba nti tamu ey'okubiri era nayo tugikwatira awo.
Ekibuga kitera okubaamu abayaaye, ensawo oginywezezza otya okugula ebintu?
Nginyweza era nga nkimanyi nti essaawa yonna bakubwendende.
Erinnya maama?
Erinnya eryange nze Eva Kasozi.
Eva Kasozi, nkwagaliza bitambule bulungi nga bw'ogenda maaso ne shopping. She's a parent. She says she's here to buy scholastic materials for the children heading to Kapeka there for Skeno School. Naye kambuzeeko yaho ono alina okuba nga yatunda wano. Ogamba otya bosi?
Fiti nnyo.
Bitambula bitya wano leero?
Ebintu tebinatambula bulungi lwa nsonga nti emiwendo girimukko waggulu. Ebintu babyongeza ate
nandira mwe mbitunda mwe mbyongeza.
Bino ebintu tetubyekolera tubijja ku kampuni kati nga bw'olaba ono Peak Fair kitegeeza katoni zino z'olaba ntuddeko ngenda wali ku Peak Fair ne bazikola ki ne bazimpa katoni bw'eba yali ya mitwalo 16,900 essaawa zino nga ya mitwalo 22 olowooza mba nsobola osigala nga ntunda ebbeeyi y'emu kitegeeza kampuni yeeyongeza.
Lwaki birinyeemu ate?
Bagamba mbuno olutalo lwa Ukraine ne Russia lwe luviiriddeko ebyo nti ebyenfuna byonna ne bigootaana kubanga mbadde manyi nti oba kiri ku sayidi yaffe yokka naye n'abasabbuuni bakaaba abasukaali bakaaba kwegamba buli kimu n'ow'engoye bw'ogenda olugoye lwe wagulanga omutwalo gumu kati gwagumu kitundu.
Amanyize bansoba kinsobere kya Ukraine ne Russia olutalo luli eri ebitabo bikolerwa wano ate tugenda maaso n'okwekwasa embeera eyo kiva ku kyolowooza?
Nanti ebiseera ebisinga buli olutalo lwe luba mu nsi ng'ebadde erina byesappulayinga mu mawanga amalala bagiteekako oluusi nati kati bwe bagisaako nati kiba kitegeeza ebintu byegenda okukola ki okuleeta biba tebikyasobola kukola ki kujja kati eyandibadde abireetera ku bbeeyi eya layisi aba alina byongeza kubanga bwe biggwawo talina ngeri gyagenda kufuna biki birala.
Sofa gwe bitambuletambudemu oba bikyaganyija
bya mpola mpola kubanga twali tusuubira nti osanga okutandika wiiki ewedde tugenda kubanga tukola kubanga eno yebeera naffe sizoni yaffe naye ekyewuunyisa okubanga kati era nsanze ntudde siina gwe nkola ki gwe nguza kiba kitegeeza tebinnaba kukola ki kutambula. Nze Kayiwa Almeida.
Webale nnyo. Kambuzeeko ne ku bantu abalala ndaba waliwo abagezi abakikuttemu edda sente wafunye edda tanzania olina kukyenkya gwe ssebo sina kifuna
twebaza mukama ffe tukifunye
bagambye mutuseera ne mufuna enzigula ekyenkya.
Muzeeyi tetunnabaseerako ebbeeyi era eya bulijjo esigadde yeeyo tebinnalinnyamu wadde.
Tusinga wano otunda biki? Ndaba tusinga kulaba bitabo.
Tutunda scholastic materials ffe zokka tutunda ebitabo tutunda penso tutunda kalaamu tutunda tipi tutunda riimu.
Abamasomero bazze dda wano okubanga abapiiki bagula ebintu bino bisinga bakyali bazadde?
Abasinga bakyali bazadde abamasomero badde tebannajja naye abamasomero bagenda ne batukubamu omupiira mulamba gwe nnyini kati bagenda basapulaya baffe ne babatuukirira bo bennyini ne babaguza ebintu kati abazadde abamu tebakyajja eno downtown okugula ebintu ebimu kati babisanga ku ssomero kati ekyo naffe kyatukosaamu ffe nga abasuubuzi b'eno mu kikuubo kati obulanga era abazadde bajja batono era oli wajja okuwerekerako munne omwagamba ebintu ebyaffe tubigula ku ssomero ate musanyu eringi bawulira bali contented nakyo.
Abasuubuzi be downtown bagadde kubanga mugenda ne season every season that comes mukwata kiriwo nayita wano nga festive season nga mutumba ebya Christmas kati osobola kusangawo kintu na kimu kyali mu mbeera eyo kati back to school yeeriwo yembeera gye mutambula nayo mu kibuga
Kampala gye tutambula nayo kubanga ekikyuka kyogenda nakyo kati era ne Valentine we n'atuuka
ate sigazaako meka wiiki bbiri
zokka naye nga tugamba no matter the economy of the jungle lions cannot eat what grass. Neyanziza amanya gange nze Regan Balemezi
yakabi nnyo
ku Mutyaba and Sons
yakabi nnyo kampiteeko ate muki ekiriwo wakabinyo akati kambuze ku muzeeyo ono oba naye yazze kugula batunda muzeeyo gamba otya
nedda sebo
erinnya sebo
amanya waswa Joseph
naawe okola wano
nkola wano sebo
sabbuuni sukaali bintu
byonna nze mbitunda ddagala ly'engatto sabbuuni sukaali
naba edduuka lijjudde
edduuka lyonna yeesebo
abantu bona tolina bwe bayita
nedda si bangi nnyo tebannaba kujja
ndaba waggulu awo
bano si bangi waliwo we bagiranga bangi n'okutunda ne kutusobera nga tetusobola
akati gwe school fees wasasudde dde ez'abaana
school fees nkyayiiya sinaba kutetenkanya nkyayiiya sasuleko renti sasuleko ki ebigenderako na bino tukolera ku mabanja tusasule amabanja tubalansinge tulyoke tufune school fees
kambuzeeko maama ono ayinza naye azze
sebo
mbuulire maama wasuze otya oli buterefu ku NTV tubuulire nawe ozze gula bya back to school
nange nze gula ku byabasomi naye era ebintu biri wagguluko tukyetetenkanya era ng'abazadde tulabe nga tuzaayo abaana
ate okwetetenkanya mwezi guggwako buggwi taamu etandika twakuva mu nnaku enkulu ogenda kikwasaganya otya kubanga n'essomero lyagala litandike nga obaddeyo fees si bikosebwa byokka byokka
tutaddeyo ekitundu kubanga era tubadde tukimanyi nti abaana balina okuddayo olina okulya ng'era olekawo ekinaasobola okuzaayo abaana tosobolaga nti ojja kulinda bamala okusasula osobole okuzaayo omwana mbadde naseevingayo kyova olaba nga nsobodde okujja okugula ebintu by'omwana nsobole okubazaayo sebo
oluwumula no olubadde lwa myezi 2 n'ekitundu abaana gwe bateesiteesa otya nga badda mu masomero
nsobodde okubateekateeka obulungi era nsuubira nti bajja kuddayo ku ssomero nga bali bulungi kubanga mbadde maama omulungi era nga mbakuuma era nga mbabuulirira kyekirina okubeera mu nsi
waliwo ennaku zino ekyogerwa school fees policy abazadde bagamba amasomero game kwongeza amasomero go bannannyini gagamba embeera mugiraba nammwe yabyanfuna bikaayi gavumenti egamulinde mu katono mugende ne fees ezaliwo taamu ewedde embeera eno mugiraba mmwe ng'abazadde mugigerako kye ya school fees policy
embeera yo si nnyangu era etunyiga nnyo mu school fees naye ate tosobola kugamba oli yazimba ssomero nti toyongeza ssente nga naffe abazadde abalina abaana waka abaana tubeera nabo olwaleero omuceere gugula 5,000 ku 5,500 emmere y'amatooke tekyasoboka abamu tugirya lwalumu n'ogyerekereza naye nze kye nandisabye abakulu b'amasomero bakkirize ebitundu bya school fees bye tuba tubaleeteddeko kubanga naffe toyina mwana omu olina owa university olina owa secondary olina ali wansi kati ab'amasomero nze mbakubiriza ekintu kimu batukwate bulungi n'obugumiikiriza ate ne bazadde bannange ne mbasaba tebalyazaamaanya masomero kubanga bw'onodduka eno nodda eri yonna omwana ajja kusasula babeere bagumiikiriza batukwate bulungi tujja kubanga tusasula ebitundu abaana basobole okusoma
webale nnyo nnyabo nsaba ku linnya lyo na
amannya gange nze Mrs. Rovinsa Kasule nga nviiridde Entebbe.
These are some of the parents, the shoppers, the traders down here in Chikubo. Of course, from this entrance up that side, you see there is what we would say bumper to bumper, but in this case it should be kanyigo kalina kuba kanyigo ak'abantu abagenda okwegulya ku bintu by'okudda mu masomero. Nkuzaayo wa Chris Igenyi ne Priscilla Regina Naroga abali mu studios of the rest of the quality programming tujja kugenda maaso n'obatuusaako ebiri mu kibuga Kampala nga abazadde beeteekerateekera okuzza abaana mu masomero this week and next week. Stephen Mbido Mfefeso ekibuga handing you back to studios.
All right. Thank you very much, Stephen Mbide, for the update there. Of course, on parents that are going about town ensuring that they are ready for the start of the school term for their children. Of course, that anticipation is high. We do hope that everything is being taken into consideration to ensure that you actually take those little ones back to school without much anxiety. Let's return to the studio with my guests, Yusuf Serunkuma, a researcher, and Collins Tugumisiri is an economist to help us. Well, they've already done that pretty much. I now ask them to wrap it up for us. The issues of governance seem never to go away when you speak about Uganda's development process. Government and President Yoweri Museveni has asked people, Ugandans, to give Uganda the benefit of the doubt when it comes to oil exploration and the prospects that will come from it. Yusuf Serunkuma, are you going to give government and Uganda in general the benefit of the doubt when it comes to this oil prospect? Very quickly.
I live here I live in this country. I have seen it. I did field work in Western Uganda. I saw the people that needed to be treated with utmost care because they're close to the oil wells. And one of the things I want to argue is that the oil casts, at that moment when hell breaks loose, it just doesn't happen in one single moment. It takes years of accumulation, and then at some point it explodes, right? And the amount of discontent, people close to the pipelines, people close to the rigs, people are threatened to go back and commit suicide in those places. So there's discontent from within Western Uganda, right? People who are close to all this activity, you know, the discontent is there. Okay, so if that could be extrapolated on the larger scale of the country, there's, as we said earlier, there's a huge governance question, and that will haunt us.
In 40 seconds, are we giving the world another oil case study?
I think the three people in life, they're the ones who make the difference, those who study, those who are making a difference, and those who are observing. So if our leaders or our citizens in the country decide that we are going to leverage this oil, we are going to study about it, we are going to turn what he says, the oil cast, we are going to instead speak that there is an oil blessing, and we're going to find it and we are going to maximize it. When he says hell break loose, we're going to say can also heaven break loose, things like that. So because Uganda is the world's big, what you call, entrepreneurial, we are very good at enterprising.
The
and yet we
statistics
don't know.
say that.
Statistics say that. So it means we have this entrepreneurial spirit.
All right.
So we don't know how it works.
Who said it?
So we don't know how it works, but we can actually make a difference.
Okay, that's a discussion you will continue with air. You please avail that information. That's Collins Tugumisiriza, an economist, and Yusuf Seronkuma, a researcher there. What I can say is that blessed be the Pearl of Africa, and we do hope, and I hope the powers that be understand that the nation needs to trust the process. Good morning.